28 Years Later was easily one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And now, having seen it for myself, I can say with all confidence that it is easily also one of the weirdest and yet most innovative movies of the year. So here's to the Danny Boyle and Alex Garland sequel that we all thought we were never going to see. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
Before I get started, I'd like to kindly ask that you hit the like button, and please subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.
What are you waiting for, huh? What are you waiting for?
It's been almost 3 decades since the Rage virus escaped from a biological weapons laboratory. Still living in a ruthlessly enforced quarantine zone, some have found ways to exist amid the infected. One survivor ventures into the dark heart of the mainland and soon discovers a mutation in the virus that no one could have anticipated. So 28 Years Later is of course the much delayed sequel to 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. So in 28 Years Later, we are dropped into the middle of a quarantine zone where the people who are still there were left to fend for themselves. And right off the bat, I think it says a lot about the unforgiving nature of this world, that you have people all over the planet basically just living their lives normal like we do, posting stupid shit on social media probably. Meanwhile, we have people in this quarantine zone that are literally fighting for their own survival, fighting to hold on to their humanity and their sanity. You see, the world has left these people behind, so they had no choice but to resort back to a more primitive way of living.
That makes sense.
Now, we've seen these zombie apocalypse type stories about what living in this type of environment does to the uninfected before. So in a lot of ways, I think this movie will feel like it is treading familiar ground to some people. I personally think that they do just enough to make this story stand on its own. A good portion of the early stages of this film features a very basic tale about a father teaching his son to survive in an extreme environment like this. And this affords this film the opportunity to deliver some exposition in the most organic way possible. As the young boy learns more about this world, so do we as the audience. I think it was a very simple yet effective storytelling device. Major props are in order to child actor Alfie Williams, who I thought did a phenomenal job in this film. He very impressively carries this movie both physically and emotionally on his very narrow shoulders. There is a surprisingly little amount of Aaron Taylor Johnson in this movie, who plays this boy's father.
You didn't see that coming.
I think from the trailer you could have came to the conclusion that he is in fact the main character. But when you watch the movie, he's more of a supporting character. Now, his character is still crucial in that his actions set the actual plot of this movie in motion. And that's what I found really interesting about this movie. Even though I wasn't really sure what to expect, it still managed to somehow subvert my expectations in a lot of ways. Put quite simply, this is definitely not the movie that I thought I was going to see. And I don't say that as a bad thing. I feel like there was a lot more heart in this movie than I was expecting. And at its core, it's about a young boy desperately trying to help his mother, who has come down with an unknown illness in an environment where doctors are not readily available. As if the characters needed things to be even harder in the middle of an apocalyptic situation. The boy and his mother do offer a lot of heartfelt moments throughout this film. One moment in particular that I think anyone with a soul is going to have some kind of emotional reaction to.
Why do you cry?
As far as the other characters in this movie, Ralph Fiennes is always a standout in almost any movie he's in. And I do think that his character is another aspect of this movie that is playing with the audience's expectations just a little bit. The truth is that you never really know what you are going to get from his character until the film wants you to know. And in that aspect, it definitely kept me on my toes. As far as the more horror elements of the film go, I did feel like the violence was a bit more reserved, especially compared to its predecessor 28 Weeks Later, outside of a couple of moments that felt like they were inspired by Predator movies.
You son of a bitch.
We also get to see different layers to the infected this time around. And all I'm going to say is, the introduction of the alphas, while somewhat cliche, was very effective. These more advanced infected individuals are a menace and absolutely terrifying. If the heart-stopping sound of their footsteps don't get to you, then their sheer presence is enough to make this world even more terrifying than it already was. I mean, these things were absolutely brutal, even if they did feature a little bit too much zombie dick at times. In fact, if I'm being honest, there's a lot of zombie dick in this movie, which could be a turnoff for some people if that's not what you're looking for. But look at it this way, at least we didn't have characters quipping about their zombie dicks, and thus making them feel less intimidating, so there's that. I also think that this movie did some very interesting things as it pertains to how it was edited together. Splicing old war footage together with whatever our characters are doing did make for an interesting visual.
What the hell am I looking at? When does this happen in the movie?
And it also kind of beat home the idea that these people are quite literally living in an active war zone. Also, massive shout out to director Danny Boyle, who made the bold decision to shoot a majority of this film with an iPhone. He even incorporated an inventive rig using multiple iPhones to give the film a somewhat unique look. As you're watching it, you can kind of tell that it was shot on an iPhone, but as I say that, I don't mean it as a negative. Because of that, to me, it actually looked more interesting than 95% of the movies coming out of Hollywood right now. I'll take a somewhat unconventional, unique look over the same boring-ass monotone visuals that we normally get. Credit goes to talented filmmakers who are not afraid to try new things instead of just doing what is familiar to them.
Goddamn right, that's the only way I work, Cap.
I started this review off saying that this is a very weird movie, and what I mean by that is that it is very different from 28 Days and 28 Weeks Later. In a lot of ways, this movie plays out like a fever dream of sorts, cutting to random unsettling visuals or dropping us into the middle of a random conflict happening away from our main characters with no real explanation or setup. I think it was done to just show the chaotic nature of this world, but it does make for a somewhat unconventional structure to this story. I think sometimes it works, and then sometimes it felt a bit jarring, almost like we are being dropped into a completely different movie. There is no greater example of this than the final scene of this movie, which has to be one of the strangest endings that I've seen for a movie in some time. The only way that I can describe it is UK Power Rangers in tracksuits, and if that sounds random, that's because it is. It is a very obvious setup for the already planned sequel to this movie. But holy shit, without the knowledge that there is actually going to be a sequel, this felt incredibly out of place. Plus, I don't really know how I feel about this movie not really having its own definitive, self-contained conclusion. It's left kind of open-ended, which, if I'm being honest, left me feeling somewhat unsatisfied. Listen, bottom line, I enjoyed the movie overall. It was intense. It had very relatable characters. It made some ballsy creative decisions, and it was great to revisit this world once again. But at the same time, some of the weirder parts did keep me from loving it, and because of that, I ended up just liking it a lot. And that's why I'm going to give 28 Years Later the pleased Palpatine.
Good. Good.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.